Network Entertainment.
I came across this video from Haley Schwartz, and that felt like a sign from the universe. Basically, she says in the video, you can read all the books, you can do all the self development, you can hear all the things of how you should be doing things. But until you are actually in a relationship and the trigger comes up and you actually have to practice what you've learned, it ain't shit. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, here I was in the process of becoming a relationship coach. Yes, learning the tools and lessons week in and week out. But I wasn't putting myself in situations that would let me put those into practice. Okay, so I'm a relationship coach. Does that mean I'm better at relationships than you? So I figured maybe for this one, I don't really have to focus on a particular topic to talk about, and instead, share at this point my quote-unquote origin story and why I decided to become a relationship coach in training. I've delved a bit into my experiences in previous episodes, but in this one, I'll share a bit more detail or fill in some gaps from where I started to where I am now. And even if there's no particular topic, I'm pretty sure you'll still have some takeaways from this episode. So, last May 2023, I decided to take myself out, not in, out of the dating scene. Just focus on my personal growth, right? That meant a variety of things like getting back to the gym, working towards my micro bakery goals, Hot Tub Bakery at Salcedo Market. Yes, shameless plug. Let's come check it out. Going back to, teaching in high school and, of course, prioritizing my classes on relationships and really just dig my heels into it. Don't get me wrong, I made a lot of headway. And I even got to travel to Europe with my parents for 2 weeks, so safe to say, I really couldn't complain. But let's be honest, right? I didn't take myself out of the dating scene unless there was a catalyst that compelled me to dip out of the dating apps. So what happened? Well, I sort of fell into this talking stage situationship for almost 4 months. He lived abroad. And while there was quote-unquote talk of him traveling here, he one day decided to disappear right out of nowhere. Like, no communication, zip, nada. It just ended right there, in the middle of a conversation. I didn't know why, and it wasn't like I couldn't get any answers either, or that I could get any answers, because he stopped all communication. I couldn't get to him even if I messaged him or tried to call him. So obviously that was bad, and I was in a pretty miserable place for a time. And that was also happening during my birthday last year. So, that was a lot of fun. No, it wasn't. It was painful. So, if you thought that was sad, what if I told you that was actually the second time I got ghosted in a row? Yeah. So prior to that one, I dated someone here while they were on vacation for about 2 months. And honestly, I didn't expect anything out of it. But we got along annoyingly well. So while he was here, we managed to see each other often. And then he obviously had to fly back home. And he did ask me, though, to come visit one day. And so I was like, whoa, holy shit. Yeah, I would. Like with everybody else, after a long vacation, life caught up. And keeping in touch became difficult. And life started to get overwhelming for him. And then there was a falling out. And then there was supposed to be a conversation, but that conversation never really followed through. And to process what happened, I wanted to find answers on social media because I couldn't just sit. There were days when I would just sit with the emotions and it was just heartbreaking. It was hard. It was difficult. Like, I fell for this person hard. Let's just put it that way. So I wanted to find like answers on social media. You know how that usually goes. It's like we want to validate our feelings, where we're coming from, why we're in the right, they're in the wrong, those kinds of things. So yeah, I wanted to find answers on social media just to make myself feel better. And that brought me to a lot of relationship topics which I never really knew about. Many of which resonated with my experiences. Many of which could have resonated with his experiences too, but I wouldn't know because obviously he ghosted me. So anyway, all that soul searching actually led me to this path, and in hindsight, I'm happy that it did. That isn't to say that what happened wasn't shitty. It was absolutely... I was living in shit creek. You know what I mean? It was a difficult and shitty time in my life. And that's also why I have such an ick towards ghosting. So, all that happened, and that led me to keep my head down and do the work on myself since May, when I decided to bring myself out of the dating scene. And while a lot of good things were happening, I really took my coaching calls, my partner calls with my coach and co-students seriously, which meant I didn't hold back on telling them where I was at in my relational space. So much so that I cried almost consistently on those calls as I continued to unpack whatever I refused or was afraid to talk about or acknowledge in my personal relationships. I did so relentlessly and shamelessly because I really wanted to change how I was with romantic partners, and even with people close to me. Because sometimes, yes, you are the problem, okay? And sometimes you need to address that problem and not just live with the fact that you are a problem, because you can always do something about it. So I really wanted to explore parts of me I never really took the time to get to know. I feel like at the very least, most of us know that we are a certain way. But if you open yourself to asking why you're a certain way, what made you that certain way, who conditioned you to be that certain way, like getting to the root of who you are now, like I keep saying, it's an uncomfortable unraveling and a much needed one if you feel like you've been living on default mode all your life and didn't know there was a way for you to actually customize it to your specifications. I'm referring to you gamers out there. I hope you get that. Anyway. Of course, it feels uncomfortable to talk about things you hardly ever talk about. That's why you have to allow yourself to air them out slowly and consistently. Because that's how it gets easier. That's how it easierly rolls off the tongue. Sure, emotions can still overwhelm me as I talk about my experiences, but they're more like welcome cameos now whenever I share my life experiences. Like, oh yeah, by the way, this is fear, this is anxiety, this is shame, this is guilt. They want to say hi. Now, I've been going on this journey for about a year, and I can say that while self-awareness is a vital skill to have, it's not enough for positive change. And that whole implementation step, setting a boundary, saying no, telling someone that you're triggered, sharing how you feel, both good and bad feelings, that's where your mind will pull you back into protective mode to play it safe. And yet, it is still your responsibility to push forward if you truly want to move towards a more authentic life. So, with everything that I was doing, I really felt like I was doing well for the most part. But it wasn't until a couple of weeks after I came back from that Europe trip that I came across this video from Haley Schwartz. And that felt like a sign from the universe. Basically, she says in the video, you can read all the books, you can do all the self-development, you can hear all the things of how you should be doing things. But until you are actually in a relationship and the trigger comes up and you actually have to practice what you've learned, it ain't shit. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, here I was in the process of becoming a relationship coach. Yes, learning the tools and lessons week in and week out. But I wasn't putting myself in situations that would let me put those into practice. I mean, yeah, okay. I've used some of them while talking to family, but in a relationship? Like, honestly, I was in a good place, sort of. And I was comfortable without dating anybody at the time. Or was I? Could I confidently say during that time that I had stayed away from dating apps that I had moments when I would watch a series or a movie, K-drama or otherwise, I would hear a love song or see an actual couple out in public and not think to myself, would be nice. Of course not. I know this is super personal to share, but sometimes when I achieve a goal, like when Hata Bakery got accepted into Salcedo Market, or when I won the Pod Network's first podcast competition, it was almost like a knee-jerk reaction to think to myself that I wish I could share this moment with someone. That isn't to say I didn't share it with anyone. I did. I told my mom, my best friends, and I'm always grateful for their support. But having that person, your person, cheering you on, giving you a big hug for doing the very thing you said you do, I just think that's such a beautiful thing to have. And I feel like that's something that I dream of if I ever get, if not if, when I get to that point of, being in a relationship, I want to share my successes with my partner. Because I know we're there for each other and we're each other's cheerleader, shamelessly, to support each other's dreams and ambitions.
Mga Immortal, listen to the Underpaid Podcast with me, Stanley Chi, wherein we talk about work-related topics in a light manner na parang nagchichismisan lang tayo or nagkukwentuhan. Listen for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or kung saan ka man nakikinig ng podcast. Kita-kits!
So after ruminating over that Hailey Schwartz reel, I decided, okay, I will start dating again in October 2023. And true to my word, as soon as October 1st came rolling in, I was updating my profiles, I started swiping, and not gonna lie though, I had a rough start. I felt that old self of me, that former version of me, creep back in while I was swiping, while I was starting conversations with these matches. But for the most part, I became more intentional during the talking stage. Like I would tell them early on that I was looking for a relationship. And also made it consistent with what I put in the looking for prompt in the profile. And what happened was not as bad as I had initially thought in my 20s. And I think that was such a significant shift in the way that I had seen dating. Intention. When my desire for a relationship wasn't aligned with whoever I was talking to, regardless if we had a good connection, they were mostly respectful about it and we'd go on swiping. This is me dating in my 30s. For a minute few, they would even ghost, but it was still low stakes. They don't know me. I didn't take any offense. And I feel, though, that that's something that a lot of singles have trouble with. If they shared that they were looking for a relationship too soon, or if they wanted something else too soon. But the thing is, people who have a habit of disappearing on you, flaking or ghosting, they're gonna flake or ghost whether or not you tell them what. They're gonna ghost or flake no matter the situation. When it is ideal for them to ghost and flake, they will do it. Nothing will stop them. Okay? It has nothing to do with you. That has more to do with them than it does with you. Period. Obviously, I didn't think that way when I started dating, like early on, right? Because here's what happened in my 20s. Whenever I would match with someone and we hit it off, I played the cool girl type who was cool with going with the flow, enjoying each other's time, without putting too much pressure on what we were or where this was going. And that is something, in hindsight, I absolutely do not recommend, especially if deep down you want a meaningful relationship. Being a cool girl does not get you a relationship. It just leaves you in a pattern and keeps you from getting what you want or reaching whatever it is that you're looking for in a connection. The cool girl is not a dating trend. It shouldn't be a dating trend, no matter if you're anxious or avoidant, because the anxious, they'll eventually crack after wearing that mask of, I don't give a fuck. Because the truth is, she really, really does. The avoidant, on the other hand, they can play the part better because it's patterned a little more to their personality. But what they're doing is they're falling into the same pattern over and over while supporting their belief that they have no one to depend on but themselves, that they're better off alone. So in my 20s, if a guy told me they were just looking for something casual or they weren't ready for a relationship, I accepted the scenario, even if that wasn't what I really wanted at all. So, of course, I'd get hurt by the end of it. But now that I've flipped the script and dictated what I was looking for in the beginning of a conversation, of a talking stage, whatever it is that you want to call it, I can focus on what I want instead of hoping and praying that someone will eventually want the same thing. And by the way, there's something to be said about dating with a scarcity mindset. I used to think that this is as good as it can get, that I probably won't find anyone else. In episode 1, I did mention that one experience that I had, the very first experience I had with a boy. And I honestly had that mindset of like, well, I guess I can settle for this. I should settle for someone who's wishy-washy. So to date with intention and with an abundance mindset now, that's an absolute game changer. I totally get why I never expressed what I was looking for in my early years of dating. I was afraid to bring it up, especially when there was chemistry in the back and forth convo. I was afraid to bring it up and lose the connection, and I settled for emotionally unavailable guys who didn't know what they wanted yet because I didn't think there would be another option. And this is linking back to my anxious attachment. If I stayed long enough, maybe they'd change their mind. So now, when I tell them that I want a relationship and they don't, then it's okay to lose that connection. It's still low stakes, and by low stakes, I mean you haven't invested in each other just yet. Assuming that you don't attach too quickly or that you've learned how not to attach too quickly, it's okay to lose that connection. And look, whether you lose a date or a match because you weren't aligned with what you want or for any other reason at all, think of it this way. You are that much closer to finding a more desirable partner. I know, after heartbreak though, it's easy for us to have thoughts like, I'll never love anybody else. Or they were perfect. Or right person, wrong time. I hear that a lot, by the way. Literally any other line too that reinforces your belief of being abandoned. If you're listening to this and you have this tendency towards relationship endings, I am telling you, that mindset needs to change right now. And I hope you can really have that firm belief in yourself that I need to do something about this. I mean, look, you're allowed to grieve, of course. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to feel angry. Feel everything you need to feel. And don't suppress it. Take your time going through the healing process. And remember, baby, whoever is meant to stay in your life will stay in your life. If they don't, then tell God, the universe, whichever supreme being you subscribe to, that you're ready to receive the next one. I know that's easier said than done. I know you're still going to be hung up by whoever broke your heart. But hopefully, not hopefully, we all get to that place where we just keep moving forward with life. Your life doesn't stop when your heart gets broken. You wish time stops so that you can have this moment to yourself. But like what John Green said, the world is not a wish-granting factory. So it's always one step in front of the other, one day at a time, until you get to that point of realizing that you deserve better. Okay, so now back to the whole implementation of the tools and learning curves I have in relationships. It is so hard. I'm not joking. I didn't even realize how often I resort to strategies to try to control the outcome of a conversation or a relationship. If you're like me, you will sometimes want to predict what they're going to say, what they're going to respond, whether it be a good thing or a bad thing. You have that tendency because that is your anxious brain trying to protect you from being blindsided by something else. And more often than not, the response is completely different. So I don't know why my brain is still doing that. That is some processing that I need to do outside of this. It's such a challenge to pause and really take a moment and consider. For example, if I send this message now, will all the choice words I've included in this text, would that help the situation? If I choose not to say anything at all to keep the peace, would that help this situation? What's really helped me in reflecting on actions and impulses is this question that I ask myself during points of potential conflict. Do I want to create a rift or build a bridge? Meaning, do I want to create disconnection or connection? Will criticizing and blaming my partner or not bringing up what bothers me create more connection? No? Then think of another way to go about it. And I know you're not always going to get it right or even get a decent response all the time. Unless you're going through the same process of healing and doing the work together, more than likely, it is a bit of an uphill battle for you to have to model the kind of behavior that you want in a relationship because they are still in that stage of not feeling ready to do the work yet. But it would be helpful to have a partner to be there and model the kind of behavior that would be crucial to making the relationship last. You just have to keep making the effort to be better. So, with everything that I've shared with you in this episode and in the previous ones, it might seem like it contradicts the whole point of me being a relationship coach. In some ways, right? Seems pretty consistent since I do contradict myself often. I do know what I want, and I ask for it from someone who can't provide it. I know I deserve better, but I'm trying to get them to love me better. So with a backstory like that, it might not make sense, right? I'll be real honest though. I still have a lot of imposter syndrome around becoming a relationship coach. I'm not cut out. I'm not good enough. This is a waste of time. You're not a good example of what a coach should be like. Yeah. I have those thoughts with me and more every day and every time I record an episode, and even when I coach clients or even my fellow students in my class. I hear the thoughts and I still do the thing anyway. In the same way, I've had my heart broken a handful of times. Yet I still open myself to love and a relationship because I believe in it and I believe that it's for me. finally, to end on a less cheesy note, there's this post on Instagram that I saw a while back that would perfectly explain why I'm sticking to being a relationship coach and why it's important, too. Just because I give you advice, it doesn't mean I know more than you. It just means I've done more stupid shit.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.